I'm very excited to be talking to Aman Sood, who is the Cybersecurity Program Lead at MeDirect Malta. So you've worked in financial services for most of your career.
Yes.
And financial services is typically where we've seen the money be spent on cybersecurity. So do you think that that's still the case, or do you think we're starting to see companies say, do you know what, we've spent quite a lot and we have a good handle on our risk now? Is that getting harder?
I think so. I think there's so many companies out there that are sort of constantly challenged between key business priorities and then balancing that with management of risk. So when it comes to cyber, there's very much the kind of the fear, the uncertainty and the doubt. So a lot of companies say, right, let's just throw tons of money at this. Let's get the best software, let's get the best technology, which is very important. But there's also the non-technical side. So when it comes to people, when it comes to processes, you can't just throw money at that. That very much is a conversation around culture and around practices and understanding what those practices are, making sure that you've got good documentation, good policies, and making sure that your staff are aware of what to do. That's a huge challenge, which unfortunately technology alone can't solve.
And in most financial services companies, you've got a large amount of people. That must be a really big challenge.
Absolutely. I mean, I work for a bank, and like most banks, there can be hundreds, if not thousands of people. So that is very much a challenge of communication, to making sure that first of all, you've got a buy-in from everyone, and then secondly, communicating that message to the rest of the soldiers. It's never easy, but I think if it starts from the top, if it comes down from the board level, and they really kind of instill that culture into the firm, then it makes life a little bit easier.
Now, what we're starting to see is banks talk to their customers about risk. I don't know about you, but I get a nice little warning from my bank when I try and pay someone new, or when I log in every so often, about potential risks. Do you think they're doing enough to educate their customers?
I think there's always more that could be done, right? I think there is a certain element of responsibility that's on the bank, which is why they're taking these measures and taking these steps to try to make sure their customers are not getting duped out of their hard-working money. However, I think ultimately the accountability lies on the individual. So the banks can only do so much. You know, there's a whole piece around education when it comes to cyber, and not just making your customers aware, but also making your staff aware, because a lot of those hackers out there are now going for the financial rewards. So this is where they're trying to induce you into moving money to an account that isn't a legitimate account, or they're trying to, for instance, there's people buying properties and they save up for many, many years a big chunky deposit. They'll get an email from their solicitor, or purporting to be from their solicitor, saying, we've changed banks, please make sure you pay your deposit into this account, and nothing's being done about that. So people are literally losing thousands and thousands of pounds from cash control breaches. So there's only so much that us as banks or us as suppliers can do. The ultimate accountability, unfortunately, will lie on the individual.
And that's a pretty scary place, because I think a lot of consumers assume, do you know what, my bank will take care of it, they'll compensate me. And that's not always the case, right?
Correct. It's certainly not the case. I mean, once that money goes, there's very little from a bank's perspective that they can do, because if you as the end user have authorised that transfer, that cash is gone, and no amount of tech in the world is going to get that money back. And obviously once it's moved, it's then quickly yanked out again in untraceable currency that no matter how hard you try, you're never going to find it. And this has probably happened 10 times in the time we've been speaking, right? So it's literally a global problem. I think the education piece on that is going to be really big.
And how do you think we can educate people about these advanced threats? Because something like that, saying it comes from your solicitor, probably looks legitimate, that can fool even people that are quite aware of some other risks. So how do we help people keep up with that?
I think it comes down to hygiene, right? So it just comes down to really, really good cyber practices. So for instance, if you're going to get an email from your solicitor or your bank instructing you to do something, you have to check the validity of that email. So you can't just trust the email address, because that can be easily spoofed. So the best thing to do there is actually do a callback and call your solicitor or call your bank to say, did you send me this email? And now, like we said earlier, a lot of companies are taking these measures and they're alarming you to say, look, we are never going to ask you for any information in this way, so please don't respond to it. However, it really has to be the onus on the end user to actually look at that instruction or request and say, this doesn't sound completely right, let me go and check that out. So I think the key message there is really to trust your gut. You know, be a little bit vigilant. You know, don't literally respond to any requests immediately. Take your time, think it through, and then if you're definitely satisfied with the instruction, go ahead, but make sure you do your homework first.
And that's a really good point. Take your time, because one of the things we're seeing about these attacks is they're playing on a sense of urgency. You know, you're buying a house, you're buying it now and you want it now. So actually you're going to be quite emotionally led by someone saying, I really need this to happen straight away.
Absolutely true. So hackers love to play on human emotion. You know, they will kind of test your curiosity. They'll dangle a carrot in front of you to make sure that you're going to get a reward out of this. They will try to buy your trust. And the hackers, the attempts now becoming a lot more sophisticated. So the urgency thing is the one where I say, look, if it's urgent sounding, then you definitely don't do it. You know, the CEO of a company is never going to email you to say, make this financial transfer. That's never going to happen. And if it does happen, don't be shy, don't be afraid, oh, because it's the CEO, I'm going to do this straight away. Absolutely not. Go and check it out. Go and speak to his secretary or get him on the phone and say, did you send me this instruction? Is this email request legitimate? 9 times out of 10 it isn't.
And that's really scary. And I've seen it in my team. I had one the other day, quite new, and I'd apparently asked her to buy some gift cards, and you know, she did come and talk to me about it, but more because she was confused about what she wanted me to do than questioning the validity of it. I think sometimes as leaders and security people, we underestimate that that power that job title has. Absolutely.
I think it's all about cybersecurity ambassadors. So going back to the culture conversation we had a moment ago. So if that culture is instilled from the top, then it has that trickle-down effect. So for instance, someone in a senior manager level, they understand that, look, cyber is not a start and end project. You know, this is a function, it's a thing. And cybersecurity is a team sport. You know, in order to win this game, we've all got to do our bit. So I think having that message coming from the top and then instilling that into the managers, and then the managers then cascading that down to the rest of the staff, absolutely key to preventing a bunch of cyber attacks.
I love that. It's a team sport.
It is.
Because all the images we see are people in hoodies on their own in a room.
that's the stereotypes.
Yeah.
You know, there's those people. I'm sure they do exist, but hackers.
I haven't met any.
Right. Exactly. Hackers can be all sizes, all shapes, all races. Doesn't matter. They can be anywhere in the world.
Women do it.
They do indeed. They can't be trusted.
Who knew?
Who can't be trusted?
But I think that's a really great way to talk about it. Actually, it's a team sport, because a team of people going up against that image is a really powerful one.
Yeah, I agree. So I think if you take any sport, for instance, that you might relate to, like I love basketball, right? So it's my absolute passion. I've been playing since I was a kid. I can't play and beat everyone on my own. It's just not going to happen. You know, so the captain of the team, the best player, would be the one setting that pace, would be the one setting that standard, that example. That comes back to the board. So the board have to be the captains of that team, and they have to really instill that culture and that message. Once that trickles down to everyone else, then they say, right, I've got a responsibility here. The cyber isn't just the IT problem, or it isn't just the board responsibility, it's everyone's. But as long as you're getting that support from the top, then hopefully you can prevent 95% of the attacks.
And I think we're moving to a place where boards have buy-in towards cyber security. But what are they worried about right now? What's keeping their attention?
Oh, that's a small question with a very big answer. I think at a board level, there's a lot of concern around data. So especially with any bank or any other organisation that manages data, I think there's a huge element there on data control. So GDPR, for instance, was really, really useful in the sense that it's got a regulatory drive, because the ICO have now said, look, if you as a company handle personal data, you have best practices and management and responsibilities around that personal data. So the board have gone, oh, we need to go and do something about this. And collection of PI isn't bad necessarily by definition. It can actually act as a business enabler. But if the framework around how you're collecting that data and those consents and those controls is not strong, the dangers and the penalties can be enormous. So I think data is a big part of it. It's kind of like 21st century oil. You know, it's this new high-tech commodity. And the other element is cash. Because like we said earlier, now hackers are saying, well, I can get a little bit more money by breaching this process or by redirecting this transfer. So I think those two big headaches exist, certainly at a board level. Thinking of the CISO, the security officer, I think their largest problems are things like skill shortages, hiring the good caliber of people, and then once you hire them, retaining them. You know, it's about attraction and then retention, and that can be very hard.
That It can be very hard.
Yeah, definitely.
Salaries are going through the roof. You get more money for moving than you do for staying. It's a really difficult
I don't.
problem.
Hold on, we need to talk about that again.
Oh, we can talk about that for days. Yeah, but big differences, and companies are still, I think, competing on money, when I'm not sure actually money is necessarily the driver. So have you seen anybody that does something really interesting to retain their staff? Something that isn't just let's throw more money at it?
Short answer is no, if I'm honest. I think for me personally, it's job satisfaction. You know, if I'm satisfied in what I'm doing, the money is almost a secondary thing. You know, I always say to people, don't pursue, you know, success, you know, pursue excellence. So I think if you're excelling at what you do, the rewards will come. But obviously we all need to earn money. This is what we do for a living. We have to feed our families. But at the same time, I wouldn't just think, right, let me just do the highest paid job, because I think ultimately you'll be massively dissatisfied. I'd always say to anyone looking to pursue a career in cyber, figure out what interests you, find your quote unquote passion, and then pursue that, because that is going to give you way more satisfaction than just going after a paycheck.
And that's really interesting, because that mimics a lot of the data that we have as well, that actually people care about career progression, they care about satisfaction, they care about having the buy-in, they care about having the budget.
True.
But companies don't seem to be reacting, they seem to just be looking at where they can pay more. So
Sure.
it's really interesting to hear that you feel the same way.
Sure, I'm just speaking of myself. I mean, there could be other people that say, no, I want to become a pen tester because it's the most lucrative area of cyber. Fine, but there's also other parts of cyber that have nothing to do with pen testing that can still be as rewarding. So when someone says, hey, I work in cybersecurity, well, what does that mean now? You know, are you a program manager like myself? Are you a consultant, or are you a SOC analyst? You know, just looking at events all day? Are you a pen tester? The realm is so wide that it can literally capture all. So as long as you know what your niche is and you know what drives you and motivates you, then I would say definitely pursue that.
Yeah. I think you're right. It's not a niche area anymore.
No.
It's a very, very vast area.
Definitely.
So if we're looking ahead to the coming year, what sort of trends do you think we're going to see more of?
I would say that the education piece is really going to increase. And I don't just mean education from a end user perspective. I'm talking about board level education, I'm talking about customer awareness, internal individuals within teams. I think a lot of boards now are recognising that, look, we've got this people element and this processes element, and not just the tech side, because the technology alone isn't enough. You know, we can hire the best people in the world, but if the human being that receives that phishing email clicks on it, or worse still, they know that it's a cyber incident, but then your cybersecurity team doesn't know quite what to do because they haven't got a plan or incident response, then that becomes another issue, right? So I think that awareness and that education is going to really, really increase for 2020, because the attacks aren't going anywhere. You know, malware's been around for decades. Ransomware's been around longer than me and you, right? I don't think that's ever going to slow down. If anything, that's just going to increase. So all we can do is just do our very best to put in our best measures and our safeguards to protect ourselves.
And we've certainly seen that this year, so it'll be interesting to see how that increases and advances next year. Do you think there are things that companies should be doing to measure awareness, measure education?
Definitely. I think that's really, really key. I would never ever want to do this and catch someone out. The purpose of the exercise is never to point someone out and say, hey, you clicked on this when you shouldn't. This is what our test has proven. It's not about that. It's about learning that this is the risk appetite of the firm. This is our education levels of the firm. There's a gap here. We need to bridge that gap. So things like phishing email tests and awareness campaigns, which comes back again to the culture discussion and that piece about being an ambassador for cyber, it all circles back.
It's a very interesting point. Phishing tests are very controversial at the moment. Should you or shouldn't you be doing them?
Well, I think they are a huge benefit to doing it. I mean, I've done tests on my own. I've written on some fake USB keys before, labelled them up with, you know, spring break pictures or fast car pictures, left them on some trade floors, and 80% of the people that find them plug them into their machine, which is not the best practice, right? But it proves something. It proves that the curiosity got the better of you there. Same thing with a phishing email. You know, and we have to remember, hackers don't discriminate. Whether it's an enterprise PC, whether it's your home computer, whether it's your mobile phone, whether it's your tablet, these guys want to get in. They want to get into your data. They want to try and gain a profit. So really important for us as end computer users, be it in a personal space or the enterprise space, we've got to be super savvy.
Brilliant. Well, I think the big takeaway, cyber is a team sport. That's my favourite one of the day.
Glad you like it.
I really like that. I'm going to steal it, just so you know.
No worries, no worries.
No one's watching, it's fine. All right, well, thank you so much for talking with us. It's been really insightful.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.